Good day, everyone. My name is Joel Galvante, and for this presentation, I will be introducing to you a new evaluation design or framework, which is the interrupted time series. For this presentation, I will be using our DevC 208F reference for this discussion, but I'll also be adding new references, which I will discuss by the end of this presentation. Hope you are all ready to listen, and let's get started. So let's look at the following objectives before we start our presentation. When learning about the interrupted time series, we need to understand the function of this design in our evaluation work. We also need to learn how to interpret its application during the evaluation period. In terms of application or implementation, we need to learn if the interrupted time series is used correctly and if it can be applied in our evaluation frameworks. So, what is the interrupted time series design? According to Shadish, the time series refers to a large series of observations made on a same variable over time. When we talk about same variable, we're talking about a sample group or a specific group in a period of time which can be observed in a matter of months, in a matter of years. It will be defined by the social mobilization framework you're going to do. Now, an interruption occurs when a specific condition is introduced during the time series. When we refer to an interruption, we're referring to a policy or a program that you're going to implement in the following group, which we've determined in our time series. And through its application, to the application of the interruption, we will observe if there are changes to be seen after the interruption. So either it can be seen through an increase, a decrease, or a plateau. And according to Velasco, the interrupted time series provides information on trends before and after intervention using repeated measurement observations. So it's very much similar to Shadish, but in here we can see that the before and after is the most important part of the evaluation. So we will see what is the trend before the implementation and what is the trend after the implementation. For the elements of the interrupted time series design, there are a total of five elements that can be observed. Number one is the predetermined parameters, which can be the user base or the target market that we're trying to implement our policies or programs in the social mobilization framework. And then there's the existing time series, which can be observed in years or in months. And then there's the pre interruption, which is the before. So, this is usually the time when the policy or the program was not yet implemented, and how the user base is responding to the following programs. And then for the interruption implementation stage, this is where we implement new policies and programs that is not yet experienced or seen by the user base. And then there's the post interruption, in which we will apply, in which after applying our implementation stage or interruption, we will observe if there are increases or decreases in the experience of the user base. So usually, as you can see here, it can be a low slope, it can be a high slope. Some of those elements we'll discuss in the following slide. So how do we interpret the interrupted time series elements and dimensions? So as you can see here, there are several elements which can be observed in the implementation of the ITS, in particular the levels and the interruption. So usually the levels are the lines that can be observed based on the progression of the policy or the program. So it can be a dip, it can be a high, it can be a plateau. So these are usually the observable timelines that is presented by a line that is moving across a particular time series. And then for the interruption, usually this is where we implement our new policies or programs. So it's also implemented with a straight line, and it indicates when the program was implemented. So this is called an interruption because this is different from what is generally experienced by the user base. And then in terms of the dimensions of the ITS, there's also a continuous and discontinuous effect, which just shows that after the implementation of the program, we can see that the trend line can be continuing, which is sampled here in the screen. It can be a high or it can be a low, but it's still in a continuous effect. The discontinuous effect is when the trend line reverts back to the previous trend result before the implementation of the interruption. Now, for immediate or delayed, as we can see in this slide again, usually the delayed dimension is when you can only see the effect of the program after a few years or after a few months of implementation. While as for immediate, you can usually already see the effect of the program. So how do we interpret the effects of interruption in the interrupted time series design? So for this presentation, we will see at least three effects of interruption, which is the drift, trend, and slope. For drift, it's usually a disturbance or a mark of a disturbance that is more than normal. This is usually indicated by an increase or a decrease in the trend line, and it can be abrupt or long lasting. For trend, the trend is usually a pattern. So as you can see here in this particular graph, these are observable trends that continues over time. It can also increase and decrease, but the pattern remains the same. If there are increases, they are usually within the trend. If there are decreases, it is usually within the trend. The difference between trend and drift is that drift tends to be more abrupt, or it can be a bit more jarring to see. For slope, usually it is a sudden change. So it's a very high change or high effect, because you will already see that there is an immediate decrease or decrease in the effect after the implementation. Let's look at the following case study by Cincinnati Bell when implementing the interrupted time series design in their new policy, which is to increase additional 20 cents in their phone services. As you can see here, from 1962 to 1974, the trend line of using the local phone call service assistant in Cincinnati Bell was gradually increasing. And then by 1974, they decided to implement a 20-cent increase in their phone services. It can be observed after the implementation of this program that there's been a sudden decrease of users in their phone services rather. And it is characterized by a large slope in 1974, which is at a downward trend. Based on the following interpretation, it shows a major drop in the use of their phone services, which can be attributed to the implementation of their 20-cent increase. Based on our presentation, here are the pros and cons of ITS. So ITS is strong for casual insights in real-world settings, particularly in policy changes, in program interventions or implementations, as it accounts for natural trends and time effects. It only needs few groups. In particular, it just needs one population over time and works with smaller data sets, which makes it a lot more easier to manage. And it also helps detect sudden shifts and gradual changes post intervention, which will allow us to see the effect of our program implementation immediately so that we can already do another intervention to arrest these changes. The cons, however, for ITS is that it is open to biases, in particular, unrelated events happening at the same time. It can also be costly, especially when we're constantly monitoring changes over a large period of time. So we might need a third party agency or a dedicated team. And then also, it could miss subtle issues like people anticipating the change. In particular, when we are introducing new policies and we announce it beforehand, other people might already have certain biases which are external in nature. Now, for the key takeaway in this presentation, is that ITS design works best for small sample groups without even needing another control group, making it easier to manage and interpret. What makes this such a great evaluation framework is that it simplifies things for evaluation, and it allows the evaluator to see the effects of their implemented programs to be seen in real time. However, it should be cautioned that because of the lack of external data and the lack of the randomization group, there can be internal biases. And threats are usually seen in history and, and instrumentation. And that is it for my presentation. Here are the following discussion questions that you can answer in the forum. If you want to check out my references, I'll be showing it by the end of the slide. And thank you for listening.